They are
Wow.
here, ain't they?
Wow.
For years, Hannah Barron has shown millions of people the wild side of her life. The catfish, the hunting trips, the cameras, and the fearless personality all made her one of the internet's most recognizable outdoor stars. But behind those videos was another story, one filled with unanswered questions, sudden changes, and moments Hannah rarely explained. Then, at 30, something changed. Old rumors started coming back. Fans began looking closer at her life, and Hannah finally addressed parts of the story in a way that made people wonder what had really been happening behind the scenes. And the truth may be far more complicated than the internet ever imagined. Long before Hannah Barron became known as the Catfish Queen, there was no reason to believe that millions of people would one day be watching her life on a screen. Her story started in Crenshaw County, Alabama, a quiet rural area where hunting, fishing, farming, and spending time outdoors were simply part of everyday life. For Hannah, the outdoors was not a hobby that appeared after she became famous. It was part of her childhood. Her father, Jeff Barron, played a major role in shaping that world. He was deeply interested in hunting and knew the land around him. Instead of treating hunting as something Hannah could simply watch from the side, he taught her how to understand the outdoors. That meant learning patience. It meant learning how to track animals. It meant understanding the land. And, perhaps most importantly, it meant learning that success did not always come quickly. One story from Hannah's childhood shows just how early that lesson started. When she was around 8 years old, Hannah went hunting with her father and eventually took her first deer. But Jeff did not simply hand her an easy opportunity. Smaller deer appeared first. They passed by. Hannah waited. Then another opportunity came. She waited again. Eventually, the right moment arrived. That experience became more than a hunting memory. It taught Hannah something that would later become important in her life online. Patience can be more valuable than rushing toward attention. At the time, however, there was no social media empire. There were no millions of followers. There was no business built around her name. There was just a young girl who felt comfortable in places where many other people would have felt completely out of place. Hannah was also unusually comfortable around animals and the natural environment. According to the story presented in the source material, she could identify local snakes at a very young age. She spent time walking through creek beds and wooded areas, learning to notice details that other children might ignore. That childhood environment helped create the personality viewers would eventually see on camera. Hannah did not need to pretend to be fearless. She had already spent years learning how to stay calm outdoors. And then came the skill that would change everything: noodling. For someone who has never seen it, noodling can look almost unbelievable. Instead of using a normal fishing rod, the person enters the water and uses their hands to locate catfish hiding inside underwater spaces. The fish can grab onto the person's arm, turning a simple fishing trip into a serious test of strength and nerve. For Hannah, however, the strange-looking activity became a natural extension of the outdoor life she had already grown up with. A neighbor named Brad Gavins reportedly introduced her to the technique after knowing her family for years. Hannah learned quickly. Then one day, a camera captured a moment that would completely change the direction of her life. A young Hannah was filmed pulling a large flathead catfish from the water with her bare hands. The fish was huge. The water was muddy. The situation looked dangerous. But what caught people's attention was Hannah herself. She did not look terrified. She did not appear to be performing for a camera. She simply looked like someone doing something she had done before. That difference mattered. The internet was already full of carefully planned videos and highly edited personalities. Hannah's content felt different because the activity itself was already part of her life. The clip began spreading. Then it spread further. People who had never watched hunting or fishing content started clicking. They wanted to know who this young woman was. How could she do that? Was the video real? Was she actually strong enough to handle a fish that large? And most importantly, what would she do next? That curiosity became the beginning of Hannah Barron's online rise. The nickname associated with her followed soon after. The Catfish Queen was born. But the strange thing about Hannah's rise was that she did not look like the stereotype many people expected. She was relatively small in height, yet she was handling enormous fish. She was a young woman in a space that many people traditionally associated with men. And she did not seem interested in changing herself to fit anyone's expectations. That became one of the biggest reasons people remembered her. The contrast was impossible to ignore. A young woman with a friendly personality was suddenly wrestling giant catfish with her bare hands. Some viewers loved it immediately. Others were skeptical. Some people inside the hunting and fishing world reportedly believed the attention would disappear. They thought the viral moment might be nothing more than a short-lived internet trend. But Hannah kept posting, and the audience kept growing. By 2018, she had graduated from Troy University with a Bachelor of Science degree, while her online presence continued expanding. Her education was important, but her real public identity had already started forming far away from the classroom. It was being built in rivers, woods, hunting camps, and fishing spots. Every new video gave viewers another reason to come back. And this is where Hannah's story becomes more interesting. Because becoming famous online does not simply mean gaining followers. It means allowing strangers to watch parts of your personal life, relationships, family, success, failure, even moments that were never intended to become public stories. For Hannah, that would eventually become one of the hardest parts of her journey. As her audience became larger, people became interested in more than catfish. They wanted to know who she was dating. They wanted to know what happened when the cameras stopped. They wanted to know what her future looked like. And one relationship in particular would later become a major source of questions. Around 2016, Hannah became publicly associated with fellow hunter, Hunter Horton. The two appeared together in outdoor content and social media posts, and their shared lifestyle made the relationship seem like a natural fit. They hunted together. They traveled together. They appeared together online. For fans watching from the outside, everything seemed normal. In October 2018, Hannah shared a post celebrating 3 years together. Then, later that year, another photo showed the pair smiling after a successful night hunt. Nothing about those posts suggested that a major change was coming. But after that, the public story became much quieter. By 2019, Hunter Horton was no longer appearing in Hannah's feed in the same way. His own social presence also became much less visible. There was no major public breakup announcement explaining exactly what happened. No dramatic video, no detailed interview, no long statement telling fans every private detail. And that silence created something the internet loves more than almost anything else: questions. Fans began wondering, what happened? Why did the relationship disappear? Had the engagement rumors been true? Was there something behind the scenes that viewers had never been told? Those questions became part of the larger mythology surrounding Hannah Barron. But there is an important difference between an internet rumor and a confirmed fact. Not every claim repeated online is true, and not every unexplained event has a secret explanation. Sometimes, people simply choose to keep private matters private. That distinction matters because Hannah built her career by sharing a lot of her life, but that did not mean she owed the internet every personal detail. Still, the disappearance of an important relationship became one of the first major unanswered questions surrounding her public life. And it was only the beginning. While fans were trying to understand what had happened, Hannah continued moving forward. Her relationship with her father became even more important. Jeff had been there from the beginning. He was not simply the person who taught her how to hunt. He became part of the content, the business, and eventually the brand itself. The father-daughter relationship became one of the most recognizable parts of Hannah's story. But years later, that same relationship would face a terrifying moment that could have changed everything. In January 2024, Jeff Barron suffered a serious hunting stand accident. The incident happened when he was inspecting equipment at a friend's hunting stand. According to the source material, the top strap failed after weight was placed on the platform, sending Jeff falling somewhere between 18 and 20 feet. The danger was not over when he hit the ground. He was reportedly unconscious and alone in the woods. He did not have a phone with him. Yet somehow, Jeff managed to get himself back home. He walked through the woods, reached a fence, and eventually drove himself to the hospital. Doctors discovered multiple spinal fractures and other injuries. The situation was frightening because a bad movement could potentially have caused even more serious damage. For Hannah, this was not another internet story. This was her father, the man who had introduced her to hunting, the man who had helped shape the career that millions of people now watched. And suddenly, the person who had always seemed strong was the one fighting through a terrifying accident. That moment revealed another side of Hannah's life. Behind the viral videos was a family. Behind the brand was a daughter. And behind the confident outdoor personality was someone who could be just as scared and vulnerable as anyone else. But while Hannah was dealing with family concerns, another part of her life was quietly changing. A new relationship appeared. A growing business was taking shape. Her audience was becoming enormous. And the internet was beginning to discover that Hannah Barron's story was no longer just about catching catfish. It was becoming a story about fame, privacy, relationships, family, business, and the price of living your life in front of millions of strangers. And that brings us to the question that has followed Hannah for years. When the internet thinks it knows everything about you, what happens when the real story is something you never wanted to share? That question would become even more important as Hannah entered her 30s, and as old rumors suddenly found their way back into the spotlight. As Hannah Barron entered a new stage of her life, something strange happened. The bigger her audience became, the more people wanted to know about the parts of her life she did not show. That is one of the hardest problems that comes with internet fame. When someone shares hundreds of videos, photos, hunting trips, family moments, and everyday experiences, viewers can start feeling like they know that person personally. But watching someone online is not the same as knowing their private life. And Hannah's story became a perfect example of that difference. After the end of her highly visible relationship with Hunter Horton, Hannah did not turn the breakup into a public spectacle. There was no long explanation. There was no dramatic series of videos. Instead, the relationship simply became part of the past. For some viewers, that silence made the situation even more interesting. The internet began filling in the empty spaces. One unanswered question became another. And whenever a celebrity does not explain something, people often create their own explanations. Some may be accurate, some may be completely wrong, and some may contain a small piece of truth surrounded by speculation. That is why the rumors surrounding Hannah's personal life have to be treated carefully. The source material describes several claims and reported connections, but it does not provide enough evidence to turn every online rumor into fact. Still, the rumors became part of the conversation. And Hannah had another problem. She was becoming more successful at exactly the same time that people were becoming more interested in her private life. Her social media audience continued growing. Her YouTube channel was becoming a major part of her career. Her hunting and fishing videos reached people far outside Alabama, and her name was becoming a brand. The simple outdoor videos that had once been filmed because Hannah enjoyed hunting and fishing were now connected to business opportunities. That changed the stakes. A normal person can post something online and move on. A major creator has to think about what every post means. A photo can become a headline. A joke can become a controversy. A relationship can become a rumor. And a simple decision can be discussed by thousands of strangers. Hannah seemed to understand that. Instead of explaining every part of her personal life, she increasingly allowed her actions to speak for themselves. That became especially noticeable when another man began appearing in her world. His name was Paul Washer. The source material identifies him as a professional firefighter and Air Force aviator from Alabama. He began appearing in posts around 2022. For fans who had followed Hannah for years, his appearance naturally raised questions. Who was he? Was this another relationship? Was it serious? Would Hannah eventually make a major announcement? But once again, there was no giant reveal. No dramatic countdown, no emotional video explaining everything. Paul simply appeared naturally. He was there during hunting trips. He appeared in casual photographs. He seemed comfortable around the lifestyle Hannah had already built. And that detail mattered. Hannah's life was not based around one specific hobby. Hunting was part of it. Fishing was part of it. The outdoors was part of it. Family was part of it. Anyone who entered her life was also entering a world that had been built over many years. Paul appeared to fit into that world without forcing Hannah to change it. Then came February 2024. Valentine's Day. Hannah shared a photo with Paul, and the two were holding a catfish together. The message itself was simple. There was no long explanation, no attempt to create a dramatic moment. But for fans, the picture said enough. It was a quiet confirmation that the relationship was important. And that was interesting because Hannah had already shown that she did not need to make huge announcements about her private life. She could simply let people see what was happening. This was very different from the way the internet had handled her previous relationship. Years earlier, fans had watched a relationship grow in public and then disappear. Now they were watching something new develop in a much quieter way. And perhaps that was the point. Hannah appeared to be older, more experienced, and more protective of her private life. She had already learned what happened when strangers became deeply invested in a relationship that belonged to two people. This time, she did not seem interested in giving the internet every detail. But while her personal life was becoming quieter, her professional life was getting louder. A much bigger transformation was taking place behind the scenes. Hannah and her father were no longer simply creating outdoor videos. They were building a business. In September 2023, the source material says Jeff and Hannah Barron co-founded a CBD company aimed at outdoorsmen, adventurers, and travelers. The business fit naturally with the audience they had already built. For years, viewers had watched Hannah and Jeff hunt, fish, travel, and spend time outdoors. Now that audience had become the foundation for a larger business. This was an important change. Hannah had started as a creator. Now she was becoming an entrepreneur. That difference matters. A creator can depend heavily on views. An entrepreneur can build something that exists beyond a single video. Merchandise, brand partnerships, products, companies. These things can turn attention into a long-term business, and Hannah was clearly moving in that direction. Her father remained an important part of the story. Jeff had been there before the cameras. He had taught Hannah the skills that eventually became the foundation of her career. Now they were working together professionally. That father-daughter partnership became one of the strongest parts of the Hannah Barron brand. But then came the accident. The January 2024 hunting stand accident changed the emotional side of the story. Jeff had fallen from a significant height and suffered multiple injuries. For Hannah, the situation was far more serious than anything that could be turned into entertainment. This was her family. This was the person who had helped create the life she was now living. And suddenly, the future was uncertain. The source material says, Hannah publicly discussed how doctors warned that one wrong movement could potentially cause catastrophic spinal damage. That kind of warning changes how a person looks at life. For years, Hannah's content had been about taking risks, going into the water, handling huge fish, hunting, traveling, living outdoors. But watching her father survive a serious fall created a different perspective. Some risks are exciting, others can change a family forever. Jeff survived, and instead of becoming a story about tragedy, the accident became a story about resilience. He had walked out of the woods, he had reached help, and he had begun recovering. The incident also showed viewers something they did not always see in Hannah's videos. Her family mattered more than the numbers, more than the followers, more than the business, more than the brand. And that became important because another challenge was waiting: the internet itself. Hannah's success had made her a target for criticism. The larger her audience became, the more people looked for something they could attack. Her accent, her appearance, her personality, her hunting, her lifestyle. And in March 2024, one of those attacks exploded. A political commentator posted a video showing Hannah helping with the construction of the family home. The post focused on her Southern accent and included insulting comments about outdoor women and femininity. Normally, an attack like that could have been a disaster. The original video could have disappeared under a wave of negativity. But something unexpected happened. Hannah responded, and she did not appear to panic. She did not spend hours trying to prove herself to strangers. Instead, she pushed back against the idea that she needed to change who she was to make other people comfortable. That response connected with her audience. The very thing the critic had tried to use against Hannah became part of the reason people supported her. The Southern accent was not something Hannah needed to hide. Her outdoor lifestyle was not something she needed to apologize for. And being a woman who enjoyed hunting did not make her less feminine. The controversy became bigger. More people saw the original attack. More people saw Hannah's response. And suddenly, millions of people who may never have watched a catfish video were being introduced to her. This is one of the strangest parts of internet fame. Sometimes your biggest growth can come from people trying to tear you down. The attack created attention. The attention created discussion. The discussion created new viewers, and the new viewers discovered that Hannah was not the person the criticism had described. She was simply Hannah. That moment became an important turning point, because it showed that the audience was not following her only because of catfish. They were following her because of her personality, her confidence, her authenticity, her willingness to keep living the life she wanted. But then another controversy arrived. And this time, the subject was not her accent. It was hunting. In July 2025, photos of a bear hunt in Idaho appeared online. The post quickly attracted enormous attention. Some people supported Hannah. Others criticized the hunt. The debate grew quickly. And once again, Hannah found herself at the center of an internet argument. The source material says the account was later locked, and that the bear photo, along with an older elk image used as a profile banner, became part of the controversy. But there was another important detail. According to statements described in the source material, the animals were reportedly eaten rather than wasted. That detail mattered because critics and supporters were arguing over what the hunt represented. For Hannah, hunting was not a new identity created for social media. It had been part of her life since childhood. That made the controversy more complicated than a simple internet argument. To someone unfamiliar with hunting culture, the image might look shocking. To someone who grew up hunting, it could represent something very different. And once again, Hannah's audience became divided. But something interesting happened. The controversy did not destroy her career. If anything, it brought more attention. That created a pattern. The bigger Hannah became, the more criticism she received. But the criticism often produced even more visibility. That does not mean every controversy was good for her. Online attacks can be stressful. They can affect someone's personal life. They can create pressure that viewers never see. But Hannah's response to those moments appeared consistent. She kept moving. She kept creating. She kept hunting. She kept fishing. She kept building her business. And perhaps most importantly, she did not allow every critic to control the direction of her life. That brings us back to the rumors. Because the biggest misunderstanding about Hannah's story may be that every unanswered question must have a shocking answer. Sometimes there is no secret. Sometimes there is simply privacy. The public does not know everything, and Hannah has never been required to explain everything. Yet at 30, the conversation around her became more intense than ever. Fans wanted to know about her relationships. They wanted to know about her future. They wanted to know whether the old rumors had any truth behind them. And every new photo seemed to create another theory. But while people were busy trying to decode Hannah's private life, she was doing something much more important. She was building a future. Her audience was approaching millions across different platforms. Her merchandise was growing. Brand partnerships were expanding. Her family business was becoming more established. And Hannah was proving that the viral catfish videos had not been a lucky accident. They had been the beginning of something much larger. Still, there was one final question. Could Hannah keep growing without losing the authenticity that made people love her in the first place? Because success can change people. Money can change priorities. Fame can change relationships. And when millions of people feel like they know you, protecting your real life becomes harder every year. Hannah had already experienced the downside. A relationship disappeared. Rumors followed. Her family faced a terrifying accident. Critics attacked her identity. Her hunting choices became a national debate. And yet she continued. That may be the real story behind the rumors. Not that every rumor is true. Not that there is necessarily one huge secret waiting to be exposed. But that Hannah's life became so public that even the parts she kept private became a story. And just when it seemed like the biggest challenges were behind her, Hannah's career was about to enter another unexpected chapter, one that would surprise even longtime followers. By the time Hannah Barron reached her 30s, one thing had become impossible to ignore. She was no longer simply the girl who caught catfish with her bare hands. She had become a brand, a business owner, a social media personality, an outdoor creator, and, for millions of people, a familiar face they felt they knew. But fame has a strange way of changing the meaning of ordinary moments. A fishing trip is no longer just a fishing trip when millions of people are watching. A family photo is no longer just a family photo. A relationship is no longer completely private. And even a simple product announcement can become a major discussion. That was the world Hannah had entered. Her success was built around something that had always seemed natural to her: the outdoors. She did not have to invent a character. She did not need a complicated storyline. She simply filmed herself doing things she already loved. That authenticity was one of the biggest reasons her audience continued to grow. But once the audience became huge, staying authentic became more difficult. People expected Hannah to remain exactly the same person they had discovered years earlier. At the same time, Hannah was growing older. Her life was changing. Her relationships were changing. Her goals were changing. And her business was expanding. That created a difficult question. Could she build something bigger without losing the simple identity that made her famous? The answer appeared to be yes. But the journey was not as simple as it looked. One of the biggest changes happened through business. Hannah's name had become valuable. Companies wanted to work with her because she had something traditional advertising could not easily buy: trust from a large audience. Her followers were not simply random viewers. Many had watched her for years. They had seen her fishing. They had seen her hunting. They had seen her with her father. They had watched her deal with criticism. They had watched her personal life change. That history created a powerful connection. And Hannah began using that connection to build products and businesses that matched the world her audience already knew. The outdoor brand associated with her family became an important part of that strategy. Instead of creating something completely unrelated to her identity, the business focused on the same lifestyle that had built her audience: hunting, fishing, outdoor clothing, gear, merchandise, and eventually, even products that were not directly connected to the original catfish videos. That was smart from a business perspective. The audience already understood the brand. They knew what Hannah represented. She was not suddenly selling something completely random. She was expanding the world people had already been watching. Her father, Jeff, remained a major part of that world. Their relationship was especially important because it connected Hannah's present success to her childhood. Jeff had taught her how to hunt. He had taken her into the woods. He had taught her patience. And eventually, he became part of the content and business that followed. That made the 2024 accident even more emotional. The person viewers had seen beside Hannah for years had suddenly been fighting through serious injuries. But Jeff survived, and the family moved forward. That resilience became another part of the story. Then came the criticism. Hannah had already learned that success attracts people who want to support you, and people who want to challenge you. The March 2024 controversy proved that. An online attack about her Southern accent and her identity as an outdoor woman became massively popular. But Hannah's reaction helped change the story. Instead of allowing someone else to define her, she continued presenting herself exactly as she was. That response was important because it showed a quality that had been present since childhood. Hannah was stubborn about being herself. She did not seem interested in changing her personality simply because strangers were uncomfortable with it, and that may explain why the criticism did not produce the results some people expected. Her audience stayed. New viewers arrived. The controversy introduced her to people who had never heard of her before. Suddenly, the same accent that had been mocked became something her supporters defended. The same outdoor lifestyle that some critics considered unusual became a symbol of authenticity for other people. This was becoming a pattern. Criticism created attention. Attention created new viewers. And new viewers discovered the person behind the controversy. But the next controversy was different. The bear hunt in Idaho brought another wave of criticism. This time, the disagreement was not mainly about Hannah's personality. It was about hunting itself. That distinction mattered. Hannah's followers were already familiar with hunting. They understood that hunting was not something she had recently adopted for views. It had been part of her life since childhood. But not everyone watching online came from the same background. Some people saw a hunting photo and understood it through one cultural lens. Others saw it completely differently. That difference made social media a dangerous place for simple explanations. A single photograph could be interpreted in opposite ways. Supporters could see tradition. Critics could see cruelty. Neither side was likely to change its mind after reading one angry comment, and Hannah found herself caught in the middle. The account controversy eventually became another example of how quickly social media can turn one post into a national conversation. Yet there was another side to the story. The backlash showed how powerful Hannah's audience had become. When thousands of people respond to a controversy, a creator can no longer control the conversation. The audience becomes part of the story. Supporters defend the creator. Critics attack the creator. News outlets pick up the story. Other creators react. And suddenly, a post that took seconds to upload can dominate the internet for days. For Hannah, this was the price of becoming a major online personality. But she had another advantage. She had already built a reputation over many years. A creator who becomes famous overnight may disappear just as quickly. Hannah's audience had been built gradually. People had watched her grow. They had seen her personality develop. They had seen her family. They had seen her successes. They had seen her difficult moments. That history created loyalty. And loyalty is much harder to destroy with one controversy. But then something unexpected happened. Hannah's brand began moving beyond the traditional image of the outdoor world. By 2026, the merchandise line reportedly expanded into swimwear. For longtime followers, that was surprising. The image most people associated with Hannah was mud, camouflage, fishing gear, hunting equipment, and outdoor adventures. Now there was something completely different: swimwear. At first glance, it seemed like a strange direction. Why would an outdoor brand associated with hunting and fishing suddenly move into that market? The answer may have been simpler than people expected. Hannah's identity was never only about hunting. It was about her lifestyle. Fishing was part of it. Hunting was part of it. The outdoors was part of it. But she was also a young woman with a personal life and a growing business. The brand could evolve because she was evolving. That is one of the most important lessons in Hannah's story. The audience may want the creator to stay frozen in time, but creators cannot do that forever. They grow, they change, they experiment, and businesses have to change with them. Some fans reportedly welcomed the swimwear expansion. Others questioned whether it could weaken the rugged outdoor identity that had made Hannah famous. But there was an interesting contradiction. The same critics who had once complained that Hannah was too masculine because she hunted were now watching her enter a completely different part of the lifestyle market. That made the reaction difficult to predict. If the brand remained focused only on hunting, some people would complain. If it expanded, others would complain. There was no perfect answer. So Hannah appeared to do what she had done from the beginning. She kept moving. That attitude may be one of the biggest reasons her career survived so many controversies. She did not try to make everyone happy, because making everyone happy is impossible. Instead, she built around the people who already understood her. That strategy worked. Her audience continued growing across multiple platforms. YouTube became an important home for longer-form content. Instagram allowed her to share personal moments and photographs. TikTok gave her short-form reach. Each platform reached a different part of the internet, and together, they created something much larger than the original viral catfish video. This is where Hannah's story becomes a business lesson. The first viral video gave her attention. But attention alone does not create a long career. She needed consistency. She needed an audience that returned. She needed content that could survive after the original viral moment disappeared. and she needed ways to turn the audience into a sustainable business. Hannah managed to build those pieces over time. That is why the early people who thought she was simply experiencing a temporary internet trend were wrong. The catfish video was not the career. It was the doorway. Behind that doorway was a much bigger world. But there was still one part of her life that remained difficult to control: the rumors. No matter how successful Hannah became, people remained curious about the parts of her life she did not explain. Who was she dating? What happened to previous relationships? What was happening behind the scenes? What did she really think about the attention? And why did she keep so much of her personal life private? The problem was that the less Hannah explained, the more room there was for speculation. That does not mean the speculation was true. It simply means that people hate unanswered questions, and the internet hates them even more. A missing explanation can become a theory. A theory can become a rumor can become a headline, and eventually people can start repeating the rumor as if it were proven. That is dangerous for anyone, especially a public figure. This is why the phrase, "the rumors are true," needs to be handled carefully. The available source material does not establish one single confirmed secret that explains everything people have said about Hannah. Instead, it shows a pattern of public events, private decisions, relationship questions, and online speculation. The real story is more complicated. Hannah's life has been watched by millions, but millions of viewers still do not have access to the private conversations that happen away from the cameras. That is normal. It is also healthy. A public figure can share their life without sharing everything. And perhaps Hannah learned that lesson through experience. Her earlier relationship became public. Then it disappeared. Fans wanted answers. But no detailed public explanation followed. Years later, Hannah appeared to approach her personal life differently. Her relationship with Paul Washer was more subtle. There was no giant announcement. There were no endless details. There were simply signs that allowed fans to understand what was happening. That difference may reveal how Hannah had changed. She had learned that privacy was valuable. She had learned that strangers could become emotionally invested in things that did not belong to them. And she had learned that sometimes silence is not hiding something. Sometimes silence is simply a boundary. That is an important distinction. The internet may demand answers, but a person does not have to provide them. Hannah's career was built on openness, but that did not mean complete access. And as she entered her 30s, that boundary became even more important. She was no longer the young woman who had accidentally gone viral. She was an established creator with businesses, partnerships, family responsibilities, and millions of people watching. The stakes were higher, the opportunities were bigger, and the consequences of mistakes were greater. Yet the biggest surprise may have been that Hannah did not seem to abandon the personality that made her famous. She still hunted. She still fished. She still appeared around her family. She still embraced her Southern identity. And she still allowed her audience to see pieces of her real life. That balance is difficult. Too much privacy can make an audience feel disconnected. Too much openness can destroy a person's private life. Hannah appeared to be searching for the middle ground, and that may be the real reason the rumors continue. Because there is always a gap between what a creator shows and what the audience wants to know. That gap creates curiosity. Curiosity creates theories, and theories create rumors. But behind all of that was a woman who had built something much bigger than anyone expected. From a young girl walking through the Alabama woods with her father, to a viral catfish video, to millions of followers, to major controversies, to family emergencies, to business expansion, Hannah's journey had already gone far beyond the original story, and there was still another chapter. Because just when people thought they understood what Hannah Barron's future would look like, her business began moving in a direction that few longtime viewers expected. And that decision would raise an entirely new question. Was Hannah changing her brand, or was she finally showing everyone that the brand had always been bigger than catfish?